Okay, so I'm talking about the dangers of football.
Elderly dementia patients at increased risk of death or stroke report fever, confusion, stiff, or uncontrollable muscle movements, which may be life-threatening or permanent.
First, before I begin, I'm just wondering who's ready for that Bears and Packers game? Anybody ready for the Packers to win? Okay, so if you can't join the club, you can't join the club if you're in the tub by Mike Zimmerman. That is a quote that I got from a hardcore football fan. I just want you to keep that quote in the back of your mind while you are listening to my speech. I am going to be talking about 3 dangerous issues for NFL football players, and those issues are going to be physically, mentally, and financially. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is concussions. Concussions happen when you collide with great force, causing your brains to hit the inside of your skull. So when you get on impact, your brain is just kind of like scrambling all over the place. If a player shows concussion during a game, it is mandatory that they be taken off the field. There are actually people hired to sit in the crowd and the boxes of football games to watch the players. If they actually get hit, then those people will go and tell them to have a medical timeout. They are called spotters. There's also people that watch the films while the game is going to also see if there's any other injuries that could cause concussions. I found an article about concussions. One of them says, after suffering from one concussion, a person, especially an athlete, is more likely to suffer from a second one after an injury. And a second concussion often comes with symptoms that last longer than the first. And some of the symptoms could be they're discombobulated, they don't really know what's going on. They're showing signs of just not being there with it.
Hi, Shelly.
Football has the highest incidence of concussions at 47%. The other half was from wrestling, from what I Googled. The next one is ACL tears. Which player is the most at risk for ACL tears? And the answer is the linebacker is the most at risk because they are pushing their bodies to the limits, especially when they're covering the tight ends and those tackles. And an ACL tear is a hit in the knee. It hyperextends. You can also get this from a non-contact, from them pushing off the ground and trying to turn in a certain position. And the other issue for physical is heart issues. There's chronic heart disease that has long-term effects of traumatic brain injuries that have robbed countless players' health, their happiness, and their lives. They do not receive the same medical and culture attention that happened from others because it's off of camera. I'm pretty sure everybody knows what happens to Damar Hamlin a while back. He had almost like a freak accident. He got hit at like the right millisecond and it just threw the beat of his heart off. It was a really big scare. Now we're going to look at mental health. We're going to look at depression. Many players who get hurt in the game, they get benched or their careers end, and this can lead them in to depression. And if it goes untreated, players could go down a dark, dark path, which could result in them ending their lives. Just to speak of a few examples, the Denver Broncos' Kenny McCleaney shot himself after a knee injury that put him into a deep depression. Also, there is Philip Adams of the 49ers who had a shoot-off with the police. He had no prior crime and police involvement. This was just, he just got super depressed and he suffered from CTE. I don't know if everybody is educated on CTE, but CET is a brain degenerative disease found in athletes with repetitive brain trauma, such as a concussion. And it's believed that a protein called tau forms in clumps and it moves throughout the brain and it kills your brain cells. And lastly, there was Junior of the San Diego Chargers who shot himself in the chest in 2012. Then we're going to look at players who struggled with addiction and steroids. Steroids can be very highly addictive. There's a player named Lyle Alzado got hooked on steroids that later left him with health issues with his brain that led him to pass away in 1994. I found an article by Michael Puma. He said at the height of his steroid and human growth hormone abuse, Lyle estimated he spent $30,000 a year on the steroid drugs, often buying them from gyms around the country. And some of the players that suffered from addiction was Brett Favre from the Green Bay Packers, Johnny Manziel from the Cleveland Browns, Ray Lucas from the New York Jets, Jake Plummer from the Broncos, and Eugene Monroe from the Baltimore Ravens. Here is a little graph that shows you that 644 NFL players were asked about usage of prescription opioids during their careers. 52% of them actually confessed to using the opioids and they confessed to misusing them. And 15% of them said that they misused them just in the past 30 days. So when a football player gets injured, they are usually prescribed painkillers to get them to not feel pain and to get them back on the field. And me being a former drug addict, opioids are very, very addicting. So it's real easy to get addicted to the feeling that that these opioids give them. And lastly, the financial issues and struggles. So I found another article from Kammer and Losardo. Research shows that athletes start declining bankruptcy as early as 2 years after the end of their athletic careers. 16% of NFL players will go bankrupt within the first 12 years after retirement. So you have to imagine when these football players, they are signing these multi-million-dollar contracts and all they see is dollar signs. Some of these players, they may come from nothing, so they don't know how to have any responsibility with money. That can spiral quickly. Another thing is when they're signing these million-dollar contracts, they probably feel invincible. And we know how the saying goes, money is power. And what I mean by that is that you have all this money and you think that you can get away with anything and everything. That doesn't always happen for most people. Most athletes get into criminal behavior like DUIs, recklessly driving. There's been tons of them that have had sexual crimes or accusations of sexual crimes, which all end up to having to pay money for either jail bonds, lawyers, and fines. So that saying that I told you at the beginning, if you can't make the club sitting in the tub, is I'm trying to show you that these football players, they sacrifice a lot for our entertainment. And there's a lot of things that they sacrifice and go through that are off of the cameras that we don't know about. And here's just another chart to show the financial struggles, just a few stats. Average career is 3 years. 78% of the players go bankrupt within 2 years of retirement. The average pay for a game is $35,000 a game, which is a lot of money. 3.2 million, the median income of an NFL player. And this is my reference page. I hope after listening to my speech that you guys now are a little bit more informed of the physical, mental, and financial issues that NFL players go through. Thank you for listening to my speech, and I hope you all have a good night.